attempt to pass the controversial Citizenship Amendment Bill began today with the Union Cabinet giving its green signal to a proposed law which would provide citizenship to immigrants belonging to 6 religious communities from Afghanistan, Pakistan and Bangladesh. Now, the ruling BJP attempted to pass the bill in January this year, but backed off after uproar from northeastern states. The bill has since then lapsed. The general elections have come and gone, and the Modi government is back with an even bigger majority and determination to pass the bill. So why is it controversial? Because it proposes giving citizenship to persecuted immigrants who are Hindu, Christian, Jain, Sikh, Parsi or Buddhist. The Muslim community has been excluded from this list, and that has led to the controversy, with questions being raised about how these amendments fit in with the promise of equality and secular credentials established in our constitution. The BJP on its part has defended the move, saying it's only non-Muslim minorities that are persecuted in the 3 Muslim-dominated countries to which this will apply. Interestingly, the new bill now excludes tribal areas of Assam, Meghalaya, Mizoram and Tripura and areas covered under the inner line, breaking down both sides of the debate for us today. Our public interest lawyer and top lawyer Sanjay Hegde, as well as Supreme Court of India lawyer Aishwarya Bhati. So both lawyers representing both sides of the debate. Thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Hegde, let me come to you first and get your point of view on why you think the Citizenship Amendment Bill is a bad idea.
See, it is an incomplete idea. Yes, there are people who are persecuted in the neighboring countries, and if India thinks that it ought to offer citizenship to those who flee from such persecution, then it's a bad idea to differentiate only on the basis of religion. It is not as if the Shia minority in Pakistan or Afghanistan is not persecuted. It is not as if the Ahmadiyya minority in Pakistan is not persecuted. It is not as if atheists in Bangladesh have not been the subject of homicidal attacks. So, just to differentiate between categories of people based only on religion, that is surely not on. It bears no rational nexus. You want to provide for the possibility of migrants from neighboring countries who are fleeing religious persecution coming into India, then by all means do so. Do not then say only migrants who belong to X, Y, Z religions are allowed and those who belong to A, B are not allowed.
They're not saying who's not allowed. They're saying only these 6 religions are allowed. The exemption is what is glaring. Aishwarya Bhati, that's really the crux of the issue. Is it fair to discriminate on the basis of religion on who deserves refuge in the country or not? Can there not be a situation where a Muslim person may need refuge and may really need protection?
So, Tamanna, first we need to understand that this is going to be an amendment to the Citizenship Act of 1955, which already prescribes for citizenship by birth, citizenship by descent and citizenship by registration. Now, this is a separate category that is being added for 3 countries, Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh, all of which are not secular countries. All 3 of them are Muslim countries. Now, religious persecution is something that does not happen to majority. I mean, when the state has a particular religion and the majority is of that religion, religious persecution does not really happen of that religion. So, essentially, this is a category that is being recognized and created as a special category to give, enable, it's not a blanket giving, but to enable giving citizenship to people who have been persecuted in these 3 countries on the grounds of religion. And we have to understand the idea of equality does not mean equal treatment of unequals. It means equal treatment of equals. So, to start with, when you are talking about these 3 countries which are not secular, they are Islamic countries, and if you are giving asylum, if the asylum was being enabled only for one particular religion, one could have understood. but the citizenship and asylum is being enabled for religious minorities of that. So that's the fundamental difference that we need to bear in mind.
No, but is the basis only their religious identity? Aishwarya, it doesn't answer the question that I'm asking and the point that Sanjay Hegde raised. Is it not possible that a Shia Muslim could be persecuted in Pakistan? And if it is so established that there is persecution, why does that person not be eligible for asylum based solely on their religion?
So Tamanna, we are not talking about fundamental rights or rights which are available as, you know, a lot of fundamental rights are available only to Indian citizens. A lot of fundamental rights are so basic and fundamental as human rights that they are available to all under our Indian constitution. We are talking about citizenship. Grant of citizenship is an arm, an extension of sovereignty of a country. It is absolutely valid in my mind, and it runs completely in the scheme of the constitution to say that from these three countries, when the ground is religious persecution, Tamanna, please try to see my point of view. When the ground for giving citizenship is religious persecution of these three countries, either you expand the zone, or if you're talking just about these three countries, then you have to recognize their religious minorities.
Okay, important point, Sanjay Hegde, it's about these three countries. It's about these three countries which have an established situation. They're Islamic countries where persecution of minorities is known, and that is the context of the amendment.
So, who are the minorities in Pakistan? Aren't the Shias minorities? Aren't the Ahmadiyas minorities? Would you classify them as only Muslim? There are even among the Muslims certain communities and certain sects of the religion itself who are persecuted. Quite apart from that, what has a person's religious identity got to do with his capacity for citizenship? If somebody is being persecuted and wants to claim citizenship in India, and if India is offering citizenship, either you don't offer to anybody, but if you are offering, you cannot differentiate based on religion alone. The Indian constitution already prohibits you, and this would be manifestly arbitrary, to use the Supreme Court's words, and it would simply be struck down. This is just politics being given a certain definition. You're basically drawing from what is the Israeli law of homecoming, of I think it's called Shova or something, where every Jew has a right of coming back to Israel. Similarly, because it would be too obvious to make it only Hindus, you add minuscule minorities like the Christians and the Buddhists. How many Buddhists are there in Afghanistan, for instance? And keep away people who could possibly be in trouble. Let me just take you back in history. When we broke up Pakistan in 1971, we took over about 1 million refugees who had come in at that point of time, and most of whom went back to East Pakistan after the trouble subsided. We did not at that proud moment in our nationhood say, oh, are you a Hindu, are you a Buddhist, or are you a Muslim? If you are a Muslim, there is no place for you. Please go and die at the hands of the Pakistani army. That's not what we did. That's not who we are as a country.
Response to that, Aishwarya, response to that.
Well, I can't get myself to agree to Hegde Saab's point of view. I think if we don't see it in the context of religious persecution in these three countries, then and you know, another distinction that I tried to make, Tamanna, was try to understand that these are not, this is not a state largesse or you know, fundamental rights, etc., that you can't have you know, intelligible differentia when you are talking about right to equality. You are talking about citizenship, which is an arm of the sovereignty, and if in that relationship it is being extended to religious minorities of these three countries, I don't see how it falls foul of the Constitution of India. We have to understand that these people are essentially different. Indian Constitution also permits, in fact, it requires equal treatment of equals. It prohibits equal treatment of unequals, because that amounts to perpetuating inequality. And if you are going to allow it to all, irrespective of their religious minorities, or make classes within religion, I mean, then that whole logic can extend to any length, and extending of that logic for fundamental rights is something understandable.
So then
But for
why the
citizenship,
exceptions
I
for
don't
some
think so.
areas in the northeast, Aishwarya? By that logic, why the exception for some areas in the northeast? Because the context is also important. The first attempt to pass this bill was made in January. It was before the general elections, and parties in the northeast, political parties in the northeast, some of who were supporting the BJP, were up in arms. They've said that we don't want anyone else here, whether they're Hindu, Parsi, Sikh, Buddhist, Muslim, whoever. If they're not from this area, we don't want them here. So now an exception has been made in this bill, this new bill, which will
Tamanna, we
go
have
to Parliament. There is an exception made. So then that contradicts the very purpose.
Well, so no, Tamanna, again, we have to see that the distinction is made qua northeast, not just in this amendment, but even the Citizenship Act also makes this distinction qua northeast. Now, in the northeast, there is a cutoff date of March 1971 when Bangladesh came into being. So northeast suffers from a very different problem. Again, if we will be treating northeast like the rest of the country, again we will be treating, we will be comparing two unequal situations in an equal manner. That again will fall foul, because we have to appreciate that northeast has a very peculiar problem, and factually the situation there is very, very different. So northeast, even now under the current regime, has a separate status, and it continues so under the amendment also, the proposed amendment also.
Sanjay Hegde, you want to come in on the part about the exceptions to some areas in the northeast being now included in this new bill, ostensibly to make it more palatable?
Well, before I come to the northeast, there's one sentence which Aishwarya said right in the beginning, which basically disturbs me a lot, saying that these people are different. That is exactly what is wrong. They are people, they are not different. If you start differentiating on religion, especially when it comes to dealing with trouble, then this country is in trouble. I am sorry, Aishwarya, but these people are not different. Their religion might be different, they are not different. Then, now moving on to the northeast, the point is that in the northeast now you have had the NRC, you have had the separate deadline only for the state of Assam. The other areas of the northeast were not covered by a separate deadline. It's not only the state of Assam, but other places also where you are now making an exception. That is, that essentially says that even if you are a Hindu refugee facing religious persecution from Pakistan, Bangladesh or Afghanistan, you cannot be an Indian citizen who will settle down in the northeast. Again, you are dividing the country. The Indian Constitution provides for freedom of movement for Indian citizens all over the country, subject to some reasonable regulations. You are saying that if somebody has happened to have come over to Assam or the northeast, then no, he will not be eligible for Indian
just
citizenship.
In tribal areas. The exception is specifically for
let's
tribal
face
areas.
it, this is a political message. Yes, in the tribal areas, and then everything will get defined as to what are tribal areas and what are not tribal areas through again various rules and regulations under this amendment. Let me also point out the problem even with regard to Hindu refugees whom you will let in. They will still have to prove that they were subject to religious discrimination or religious persecution. Anybody can take them to the foreigners tribunal and say, no, they were not religiously
actually, let me just get Aishwarya's response on that
persecuted.
last
It was
part,
only economic
because I'm running
migration
out of
which
time
caused
on this
them.
debate. Yeah, let me just get Aishwarya's response to that last part. Aishwarya, how will you determine the claim of religious persecution? Merely belonging to a certain minority religion in a Islamic state or in an Islamic country does not necessarily mean you were persecuted. How will we determine that?
No, not at all. It cannot mean. It will have to be that there will have to be an inquiry and investigation on the basis of facts. These are all, our adjudication tribunals and courts are competent to make that inquiry on the basis of facts, and it will essentially depend. It cannot be a blanket. We have to again understand, Tamanna, that this is an enabling provision. It's not like everybody from there will be granted. And Mr. Hegde made a point about the statement that I made, that these people are different, without really addressing the point that I made, that the constitution permits equal treatment of equals only, not equal treatment of unequals. So in that context, I was saying that these people are different. When you're talking about religious minorities and people who undergo religious persecutions, when you're talking about these three countries which are purely Islamic countries, their constitutions are not secular like our constitutions.
Well,
so
that's a good
they
note
don't
to end
have,
on.
and you can't have religious persecution of the state religion.
Yes, that's a good note to end on. Underlying, this entire debate, that we live in a country where the constitution is secular, and everything must be upheld to that. Thank you so much, Sanjay Hegde and Aishwarya Bhati, for joining us. I hope those watching have been provided with both sides of this very contentious debate by some of the best legal minds out there. I'm going to take a very short break, but when we come back, we have a lot more for you. We're going to talk about the first debt ETFs, the bond ETFs that have been announced today by the finance minister. Is it a good idea for you? And we're also going to come back and trace the fantastic journey of Sundar Pichai. Don't go away.